So if you're on one of those plateaus, let's talk about what's stopping you from taking the next up bit on the growth worm. We often find that it's actually the choice of the owner rather than anything else. Here's a few reasons why you might not want to grow any further. The first one is that you're more of an Elton than a Ronald. We often refer to a book called The E-Myth Revisited by a man called Michael Gerber. And in that book, he often talks about McDonald's, because McDonald's was the first proper turnkey franchise. It started out with two guys with a little restaurant, and then because they systemized all the different aspects of their business, they were then able to replicate that in many other places. So our version of a Ronald is somebody who started out doing whatever it was that the business did, but has now systemized every single aspect of that to a point where they're no longer customer facing, they're no longer involved in the day-to-day operations of the business. They may be sitting up there in some fantastic office at the top of the big building that they run their business from, working on things like strategy, marketing, and dealing with all those other strategic or growth issues. Now, that's the sort of thing that a lot of people aspire to. People that are really busy every single day want to be able to step away from the front line. And that might be the right thing for them to do, but it might not. But being a Ronald is not the only successful business model out there. Let's just think about one of the most successful people in this country in financial terms, Elton John. The one thing that he doesn't do in his business is train up lots of other little Elton Johns to go out every Saturday night all around the country singing Goodbye Yellow Brick Road. His business is all about him. He's the one that earns the money for the business. He's the star performer. He needs to have people behind him who will support him and do everything else so that he can go on stage and earn the money for the business. It may be that your business is the same. It may be that you're more comfortable being the star performer, being the person that earns the money, rather than having to sit back and work on all of those strategic type issues. But of course, Ronalds and Eltons are the two extremes. Most of us are somewhere between one or the other. Some days we're being more like a Ronald, putting systems in place, training our staff. Other days we're actually out there earning the money. So let's have another look at one of the reasons why you might not want to grow any further. A big one is that people are not prepared to sacrifice profit for growth. Because in financial terms, that's often what you need to do. You need to spend money on things that are going to help you grow, like marketing, like IT. You perhaps more significantly, you need to spend some of your time doing things that are going to help the business grow. And if you weren't doing that, that time will be spent earning money for the business. So you often need to accept that to grow the business, there may be a short-term drop in your profits. And a lot of people aren't prepared to do that. Perhaps they don't want to, perhaps they can't, because the amount of money that they're earning at the moment is what they need to pay all the bills. But if you do want to grow your business, then this is a really good graph that can help you identify the balance between profit and growth. So what you'll see on the left-hand side are some percentages. These represent the percentage of turnover that becomes net profit. And what you'll see along the bottom are some more percentages. These represent the percentage of growth that you achieve. Now, there are some businesses that go for many years without making any profit. Some of you might remember back when the financial sections of the press were full of stories about how this company from America, which had lost money for 8 years, in fact had never made a profit at all, had a stock market valuation that was more than Sainsbury's. I remember talking to one of my clients who was saying how ridiculous that was. But the reason that that particular company had this high stock market rating, even though it was losing money, was because of its phenomenal level of growth. People believed that the growth that this was achieving would eventually turn itself into profits. And those that invested in that company turned out to be right, because that company was called Amazon, and we all know the rest of the story. So sometimes you might be prepared to accept losses if you're achieving high levels of growth. But alternatively, if you're not achieving any growth whatsoever, then you probably should be aiming at high levels of profits. That might be a business that is in that maturity phase that we focused on earlier. Now, there's obviously a balance to be achieved between the two. When you start a particular year, you may have an idea what level of growth you want to achieve, and you may have an idea what level of profit you might achieve. But opportunities might arise that allow you to grow that business, and you might have to sacrifice some profit along the way. So you might get to the end of the year having achieved a lower level of profit but a higher level of growth. That would, to you, would be just as acceptable as the figures that you targeted. So really on this graph, there's one section there, everything above the orange line, which is acceptable, and everything below the orange line, which is unacceptable. The line is your personal choice. Now, there is a third reason why you might not want to grow any further, and that's because you simply don't want to do the things that you need to do in order to grow. Let's talk about doing what needs to be done. This is all about comfort zones. Human nature often draws us to justify avoiding the things we don't want to do. Here's our comfort zone. Everyone has got a comfort zone. Everyone's comfort zone is different to everyone else's. But generally in business, the things that you need to do to go up to the next level are going to be outside that comfort zone. If they weren't, you probably would have done them already. The magic is going to happen when you step outside that comfort zone. See, the really successful people are prepared to step outside that comfort zone. And what you then see is that comfort zone starts to expand. Eventually, all the things that you need to do in order to make the business successful are now inside your comfort zone because you've done them so often. Think about the first time that you went to see a potential customer. Think about the first time that you stood up in front of a group of people to talk about your business. Think about the first time that you stood in your company's conference room presenting to a camera to go on YouTube. All of these things were outside your comfort zone to start with. But once you do them a few times, your comfort zone expands and then you can move on. But if you really want to grow, what's stopping you?